welcome to Encore, the arts and culture show here on France 24. Today we're talking movies, top of the bill. We take a look at the life of Riley and of one of France's most celebrated filmmakers. Alain René's last cinematic offering is released just weeks after he passed away at 91 years of age. Plus, we'll tell you how a 135-kilo cross-dressing crass actor earned the name Divine. We take a look at the documentary about Harris Glenn Milstead's life. And superheroes unite as Captain America's latest adventure hits cinema screens. We take you back to the humble 2D beginnings of your favourite on-screen action figures. Our film critic Lisa Nesselson is here to dissect all of that with us, so let's get started. Hi Lisa, great to have you with us as always.
Hello.
Well, we're going to start with the final film from French director Alain René, who died, of course, on March 31st at the age of 91. Now, to most of us, that seems pretty old to still be making movies.
It does, doesn't it? Except in René's case, he had just finished a first draft of the next film he intended to make, and his producer had actually announced it in the trade papers. Alain René was one of my lifelong heroes, but I have to say that his final film, Life of Riley, Aimer, boire et chanter in French, it isn't a particularly good place to start if you're unfamiliar with his work. It's adapted from an Alan Ayckbourn play in which an unseen character named George is terminally ill, but he decides to have some fun with a trio of women from his past before he dies. René loved toying with theatricality, and he loved working with the same troupe of actors. This film won the International Critics' Prize at the Berlin Film Festival in February, and also the Bauer Prize, which usually goes to a young director just starting out, but they cited the level of invention and innovation in this film at age 91. Let's take a look.
Georges.
Georges. Bonsoir.
T'étais où?
Je suis passée chez Georges. Je te l'avais dit.
T'étais où?
Je suis passée chez Georges.
Tu vas y retourner alors? Revenir avec ce Georges, c'est ça?
C'est vrai, je t'ai suivi, oui.
Tu voulais voir si Georges et moi, on était en train de s'enfiler comme des lapins?
Tellement, c'est plutôt le calme plat depuis longtemps. Comme ils disent dans les westerns, ça fait longtemps que les caravanes ne passent plus par ici.
Oh. La prochaine fois, on ira au cinéma.
Well, Life of Riley was his last cinematic offering, but René has had such a long and illustrious career. What have been some of his highlights?
Well, his first feature, Hiroshima Mon Amour, released in 1959, remains an emotional and aesthetic shock in the best possible way. It's so good that Jean-Luc Godard himself said it made him jealous. It's about a French actress who meets a Japanese man on location in Japan, and it was written directly for the screen by Marguerite Duras. It's as exquisite as it is devastating. It is truly a landmark in film history. René began his film career as an editor, and he remained fascinated with the form storytelling can take right up to the very end. He loved comic books and musicals, and at the funeral service on March 10th, they actually played Stephen Sondheim's song Send in the Clowns 3 times, including a clarinet solo, and the mourners were treated to excerpts from a Laurel and Hardy film on 2 screens on either side of the altar.
You actually attended that funeral, didn't you?
I did. I paid my respects, and while I was waiting to toss some flower petals on his coffin, I was speaking with a colleague who said that he doesn't, as a general rule, believe that films can change history, but if there's one exception, it would be Alain René's Night and Fog. This is a seminal documentary he made about the Nazi concentration camps and the Nazi death camps. René was an unfailingly gracious and kind man. And to give you a sense of his stature as an artist, here is the left-leaning daily Libération from about 36 hours after he died. As you can see, they put his beautiful shock of hair and his head on the front page, and the next 6 full tabloid pages are devoted entirely to René. It was front-page news across the media spectrum, and in my humble opinion, that's exactly as it should be.
Really gives you a sense of how much he was revered here in France, doesn't it? All right, well, let's move on to another film out this week in France. I never thought I would say these words on television, Lisa, but I Am Divine is about a 136-kilo cross-dressing female impersonator.
Oh, not another movie about someone like that. Budding filmmaker John Waters and pudgy, eventually to be 300 pounds, cross-dressing Harris Glenn Milstead, that was his real name, met as teenagers in Baltimore, Maryland, and they made movies just with their misfit friends for the fun of it, and they never dreamed they were going to go on to become a pillar of the midnight movie circuit of the late 60s and early 1970s. That was movies that were a little too outrageous to show during normal opening hours. And one of the more famous titles is Waters' Pink Flamingos. The name Divine stuck. It started out as a joke. Despite her willingness to do anything, and I mean anything, the more outrageous the better, Divine played female so well that you forgot you were watching a way beyond chubby male. So here's a taste of truly bad taste in the service of entertainment. Let's watch.
I love to be shocked, I think. You make my nips get hard. So that's my job, to get out there and shock them.
Divine was dangerous. Part outlaw, part serial killer.
You, my dear, are dead.
Divine was a cinematic terrorist.
She was simultaneously sexy and monstrous. Is she gonna screw me or eat me?
She was a midnight movie star. You could only see her after midnight, but it was worth staying up.
I am divine.
Quite the character. Well, what's interesting is that John Waters and Divine went on from making rather outrageous underground cult movies to something comparatively more sweet and mainstream, shall we say, like Hairspray.
Yes, they both matured as artists, something that couldn't really have been foreseen from their start. Their career trajectories strike this wonderful blow for misfits and outsiders everywhere, that you can be accepted. This documentary, it's lively, it's bittersweet, and it's full of fun facts. And I should point out that France has always given an extremely warm welcome to the films of John Waters. I love the fact that John Waters and the American heiress Patty Hearst met when they were both guests at the Cannes Film Festival. She was there for the film Patty, in which the late Natasha Richardson played her during the time when she was kidnapped by the Symbionese Liberation Army and then went on to be a revolutionary. Well, Hearst and Waters met at a festival dinner and they decided to work together. She ended up acting in his next movie, even though she's not an actress, Vive la France. And by the way, on the subject of pink flamingos, be it known that the oldest pink flamingo in the world, not the real kind, the kitschy kind you stab on your lawn, recently died at the zoo in Adelaide, Australia, at the age of 83. My condolences, Jade.
Yes, it's my home country. Very tragic. All right, we're talking of documentaries. There's a film festival devoted to the métier and visual anthropology underway at the Pompidou Centre here in Paris. It's called the Cinéma du Réel. Lisa, it sounds a little bit dry and possibly dull. Can you convince us otherwise?
I'll do my best. I agree that the term visual anthropology doesn't sound particularly sexy, but I have to say that in its 36th year, this is one of the festivals where I've kept memories of films that truly have gone on to haunt me. I remember one documentary about the last shoemakers to produce footwear for a Chinese woman whose feet had been bound from a very early age. You couldn't just get those off the rack. And another one about the last weeks of an ancient Chinese village that was about to be swept away and flooded forever by the Three Gorges Dam. One aspect of this festival that I appreciate is that it's held in a world-class modern art museum, so it reinforces the idea that cinema is an art form.
Right, and a man who proved this and is a pioneer of visual anthropology is being honoured at the festival, isn't he?
His name was Jean Rouch, and the festival is mounting several tributes to him through the end of the month. Rouch fell in love with Africa very early in his long life, and with a handheld movie camera made one of the strangest films of the 20th century. It's called Les Maîtres Fous. In Accra, Ghana, African men with responsible jobs in town take a day off to enter into wild trances, possessed and literally foaming at the mouth, and acting out this bizarre parody of the colonial institutions they see around them. An animal is sacrificed and eaten raw, among other stunning behaviors. Rouch captured it all on film and recorded a matter-of-fact voiceover that helps us understand what we're seeing, even though what we're seeing is way, way out there. The punchline, which I think remains food for thought over half a century later, is that maybe these African guys know something we in the West don't about mental health and how best to achieve it. And Rouch's work is being restored and digitized in the lead up to his centenary, which will be in 2017.
Sounds fascinating. All right, well, let's move on to something a little bit different now. Lisa, are you a superhero fan?
Of course I am. I love, love, love Superman. And, you know, I have to say Captain America's kind of cute.
All right, well, speaking of Captain America, a new Captain America venture is out this week. But before he became a movie star, he, like many of his superhero compatriots, had humble 2D beginnings. Now, a spectacular retrospective of Marvel comic books has opened here in Paris that takes you back to where the ventures of Iron Man, Spider-Man, Spider-Man and the rest began. Thomas Waterhouse gives us a sneak peek.
Superheroes unite. Made famous once again thanks to the big screen, these men and women first flexed their muscles back in the 1940s. Captain America, whose props and costumes make up part of this show, was originally a patriotic fighter, out to defeat Nazism. Others like Thor, Wolverine or Iron Man were born much later, thought up by Marvel's creators to fight for good against evil, equipped with a range of superpowers.
Superheroes really make up part of our culture. I would even go as far as saying our mythology. They are just like Greek gods, or more recently, the Knights of the Round Table.
Jean-Jacques Launier fell in love with Marvel's comic books in the 1960s and has just spent several years pulling together the 300 works for this exhibition, like these exquisite black and white storyboards that still show the blue crayon marks and corrections of the original illustrators, the work perhaps of Jack Kirby or Steve Ditko. Not considered to be a fine art at the time, for Marvel's modern-day illustrators, their work is something to be relished.
I've gone through, all of the same training or more training than a fine artist would. We're still dealing with the same things, light, color, composition, form.
As a new Captain America adventure opens in cinemas, this exhibition reminds us that our favourite superheroes have history, as it pays homage to their super creators.
All right, well, that brings us to the end of our cinematic adventure for today. Thanks, as always, to our film critic, Lisa Nesselson, for joining us. And thanks to you for tuning in. We're going to leave you now with a clip from Captain America, the Winter Soldier, Avengers Assemble.
You told me not to trust anyone. This is how it ends. Everything goes.
Looks like you're giving the orders now, Captain.
Damn right.